Welcome to the Burnout Room, a podcast about burnout, effective leadership, and wellness in nonprofits.
I'm Dr. Courtney Keim, a workplace wellness researcher and professor.
And I'm Sarah Burris, an organizational leader and nonprofit wellness advocate.
Whether you're facing burnout, leading a team, or working to build a healthier workplace, this is your space to find support, community, and solutions for any organization.
On today's episode, we're going to answer a few questions that we received in our inbox from nonprofit leaders and staff. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk with you, Courtney, about some current event that's recently happened in our area that I'd like to look at through a work lens. So recently in the city that we reside in, Louisville, Kentucky, we experienced a catastrophic plane crash.
Yes.
Um,
Awful.
just absolutely horrific. 14 people lost their lives. Our community was rocked by this just really awful thing that happened. And as I was reflecting on it, I was really thinking about what is it like to go back to work after a critical crisis takes place. How do you manage that? How do you as a leader manage that? How do you as a staff person come in after, how do folks from UPS go back to work after something like that happens? And so I just really wanted to talk to you about your thoughts.
Yeah, such an interesting conversation for us to have. And as you said, Sarah, like what an awful event that happened. When we look at these kind of events that happen in the workplace violence, these really awful, but rare occurrences where you might lose someone unexpectedly in your workplace. I mean, these are things that can really shake the foundation of the people who work for you. And certainly a place like UPS, where the closer that you are to the event, the more that it can affect you. But I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I am thinking about even like the update to the DSM-5 relatively recently had the update to PTSD is that you don't actually have to experience a traumatic event to get diagnosed with PTSD. You only have to hear about it. So you can think about people who work for UPS who they may not have been at work the day that happened. The people who work around the airport may not have been at work that day, but you certainly hearing about that event. I mean, I think this could be a flashbulb memory for those of us who live here. We probably all know where we were. Not only when we first heard the news, I was at the gym, I was working out, I was on the treadmill or the elliptical, and kind of one by one, all of the TVs at the gym started turning to the news. And then just that eerie feeling of everybody's phones going off because the emergency alert went through everybody's phone in the entire city of Louisville, and we were under shelter in place. I mean, it was eerie. The sky was eerie, and we didn't know at that point what plane had crashed, how many people could have gotten hurt. And then to be someone who has to go back to, an automotive shop that's near the airport the next day. That it's really tough. It's really tough. When you work in a small city like Louisville that has a really big employer like UPS, we all know somebody who works at UPS, or we are one step removed from that. I know that my next door neighbor is friends with a pilot who works at UPS, and he was supposed to be on that plane.
Oh my gosh.
And wasn't, right? And that's that's only one small story that so many of us have. And I think your question of like, what is the responsibility of any leader, not just at UPS or the places right around the airport, but for any leader that is in an organization that is here, where all of your employees saw what happened, may have connections to people who work there. And even if you don't, again, just that eerie feeling of the crash happening and all of our cell phones going off. It was a really terrifying and really awful, awful day.
Yeah, I just kept thinking about, like, from a community member's perspective, how awful this is. My spouse worked at the Ford plant that's right down there for a number of years, has a lot of close people down there. We were not sure, like no one was sure for a long time what the actual damage path was, what was affected, how many people had been killed. So you're right. We live in a smaller knit community. And so I'm looking at it from a community member's lens, but then also, my workplace wellness lens is going off. And I'm like, how do you as a leader go back into work the next day and help your folks navigate through all of the feelings that they're feeling while also knowing that you have a job that you have to get done? I think about it a lot through the nonprofit lens and like what it would be like for, heaven forbid, a smaller nonprofit to go through a crisis situation like this and having like no resources to kind of put those things on. So it's just really been like living in my brain for, the last several days as I'm thinking about the impact of this crash and how leaders really are expected in situations like that to be able to pull their folks up and kind of get them back on track. I, I just don't know how you do that in a situation
Yeah.
like
And
this.
I appreciate that you're saying that you're still thinking about this. This did not occur a few days ago. This has been quite a while now that that has happened. And yet it can be something that still like lives in our minds. It's something that can
Right.
be in the forefront of your employees. Certainly we think about big structural things like employee assistance programs. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, if you can bring on therapists and mental health professionals on site that can help people immediately, especially those people who worked directly with people who were lost or affected. That can be helpful. Having anybody who works for your organization through that EAP be able to get access to free therapy is very helpful. But every person in this city and throughout the city, the state is also affected by this. If you are a nonprofit with not as much resources, maybe you don't have an EAP program that you can offer to your employees. I think you can do small things. Number one, you can just talk to people about it. Open, honest communication, I think, can be so helpful. Even if you're not someone who needs to go talk to a therapist about the incident, just knowing that your leader is aware of it and knows that it could affect people and has an open door policy to come chat with me about it, that can really go a long way. So not saying anything, I think, is probably not the best way to go. I know
Right.
sometimes as leaders, you don't want to say anything because you don't want to say the wrong things. But I think just having a really open, clear, honest communication about, I know this happened. If you need support, please reach out. And to have maybe some intentional ways that you can offer more support. Like I said, maybe it's open door policy. Maybe it's like having office hours for a
Right.
leader, like, hey, if anybody wants to come talk during this time, or if we want to get a group of people together come talk about it. So without some of the structure, I think some of that informal communication and kind of the one-off meetings can be really helpful in that moment. But if you have to think about it too, as do you have a culture every day
Mm-hmm.
that offers support and care? So if something bad happens and all of a sudden leader comes around and is like, hey, is everybody doing okay? This really awful thing happened. Your employees are not going to trust that you're being authentic or true or that you actually care. It really needs to be like nested in a larger culture of care for people and their mental health and well-being.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think that as we, continue to have these conversations and we have conversations around psychological safety and leadership, when we talk about trust in our leaders, things like that, I think we'll talk more concretely about what some actions that leaders can take to cultivate those cultures. Um, but yeah, just like really thinking about these like crisis things that have happened in our community in the past, it makes me think more and more about what nonprofits go through, even when we talk about like natural disasters and things like that. So, in the state of Kentucky, we have seen historic flooding. We've had a number of tornadoes that have hit our state in the last several years. And as a person that works for a nonprofit who also happens to live in a floodplain, I have been in situations where I am not safe. And, we're putting out messaging to other people in the state who are also being impacted by these floods, but I'm also at home being impacted by these floods. So I think just continuing to remember as leaders that our folks are multifaceted, that they are not just workers, but they have lives outside of our workplace, and that we are also impacted by these things that will inevitably impact the organizational structures and systems is important. And that we
Yeah.
should continue to like advocate for our folks who are also going through those situations.
Yeah, you're talking about how you were affected by the flood. I mean, Sarah, I've seen a picture of you, I believe, in a kayak or a canoe or something. You were definitely in a
Yes.
floating device with a paddle to get
Yes.
to your house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And during those times, our organization's putting out, information to other Kentuckians who are dealing with this issue while I'm also in a kayak trying to get, away from a potentially dangerous situation. So, yeah, it's just an interesting juxtaposition of, I want to be a person that's out there helping other people, but I'm also affected by this thing. So I just, yeah, it is.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad that you brought this up. One of the things that I think leaders have to think about is not just reacting in the moment, but planning for the future.
Mhm.
And you got to plan for the unexpected and how it's hard to do. Like, how do you plan for things that you don't know are going to happen? And I think that's where our building the day to day, daily relationships are going to be really critical to having the trust that's going to be needed when you are dealing with a crisis, whether that be a pandemic, a merger, a natural disaster, a workplace accident. You've got to do those good leadership behaviors in between those big events in order
Yeah.
to you to be able to get through the big events when they do happen.
Yeah, most definitely. And hopefully we'll talk and give people some concrete actions that they can take to cultivate those cultures.
Yes, they are through the Nonprofit Wellness Initiative, which is on
Maybe.
KPF's website. We do
Yeah.
have a ton of resources that are there that we can direct people to that will be able to help in many instances, not necessarily or specifically in like natural disaster. If earthquake, send this email. That's not what's in the toolkit, but in
Right.
our nonprofit wellness toolkit, we do have a number of resources just about like here's how to communicate with staff. Here are ways that you can establish and build trust throughout the year, not just when these big disasters happen.
Yeah, because you're absolutely right. Like just coming out of the blue and suddenly being a supportive leader when something tragic happens doesn't necessarily convey like the authenticity that somebody would want from a leader. Like I want to know that you care about me all the time, not just when this crisis has occurred. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing up that story. It is something that I've been thinking a lot about as well. And in some ways, like anecdotally investigating how different people, how different leaders have addressed their staff. I'm curious though, like, what was specifically what was said in your organization when that happened? Was there mention in the office about this event? Was there mention of support that was offered there?
Well, to be quite honest, I was at home with COVID when it happened. So there
Oh,
were things
right.
happening here without me, which again is another thing we should talk about is me having COVID the week before the largest event that I had ever had at my workplace. But I do know that because our office has cultivated just this culture of support and caring, we were texting each other after it happened. We've got a staff member who lives down towards that area. We were checking in on her to make sure that she and her partner were safe. So it was definitely like an immediate, this thing happened. I need to check on my people. So we definitely jumped in to support each other in that way. But as far as like internal communications, like, you know, traditional support systems put in place, EAPs, things like that, that wasn't really something that we felt needed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it, when the news came and that did happen, I said I was at the gym. So my first concern was obviously like my kid.
Of
So my
course.
daughter was at home with my husband. And so I'm texting my husband to just say, like, hey, her phone is going off. She's probably wondering what's going on. Like, let's make sure that she knows that she's safe. Like, that's number one.
Mhm.
You are safe. And I do.
Yeah.
This is not the first time that I've mentioned like the overlap between leader and parent is not a complete circle, but there is definitely a Venn diagram overlap there. And so,
Most
yeah, as a
definitely.
leader, it's like the first thing you probably need to do is make sure that your employees know that they are safe, or to check and make sure that your employees are safe. I think I've got like one student who works near me who works at UPS. And so the people who were down here in the office where I am, our first thought was like about that particular student, like, are you
Right.
safe? And then making sure that the students know, like, hey, that you are safe, because our campus is within a couple of miles of the airport. So we were on lockdown for so long that we had commuters who weren't allowed to leave campus until like 9 o'clock that night. So
Wow.
yeah, so there were a lot of people who were affected by that. And there was definitely a focus on like making sure that the students know that they are safe, know that they're supported, know that they know
Hmm.
where to go. And as a leader, I think maybe you don't think about your employees as being your children necessarily, but like that is
Yeah.
kind of step number one, is like to make sure that they know that they're safe, and
Right.
that if they are not feeling safe, that you can give them the support that they need to help them get there.
Yeah. And that was definitely what happened in our organization. And we did send out, we disseminate information to the public about ways that they can cope with situations like this as well. So, um, yeah, it's a hard thing to navigate.
And kudos, by the way, to all of our leaders here in the city and in Kentucky. I thought they did such an amazing job
Yes.
on the uh what are those things called when you report to the media?
Oh, their press
Press conference.
conferences.
Thank you. Press
Yes.
conference. So yeah, there one by one there were folks that were getting up at those press conferences and talking about what information they knew, but there was also really a focus on the people and taking care of people, which I really thought was the right note to hit in a situation like that. So kudos to all of the first responders who were running towards folks to help them. I know that there were people who were like trapped in between
Hmm.
the like there's a lot of chain link fences and things because of the businesses that are around the airport. You can
Yeah.
imagine are a lot of like scrap yards and automotive industries. And so there were people who were caught in between those fences. And I know that there were first responders who had to come out and like cut fences away to be able to rescue those folks who were trapped. And the people who ran towards the fire, those firefighters who worked so hard and so long to put out what was just a tremendous blaze. Like a lot of very brave people, as Mr. Rogers says, right? You look for the
You
helpers.
look for
Oh
the
my gosh.
helpers.
They were
That's
everywhere. They were everywhere.
They were everywhere. So an honorary ripple of gratitude to the helpers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh. Well, um, thanks for talking that through with me. It's just been really heavy on my brain the last, several weeks, months. It's been in there. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Sarah, I have an article that I wanted to talk to you about, and this is certainly we're going to change the conversation pretty quickly here from we've been talking about a very serious topic to maybe something that's a little bit more silly. I saw a post on LinkedIn some time ago about work-life balance is dead. Long
Oh.
live the work birth. And I said, what is that? Okay.
What? What is work birth? And who coined this term? It's bad. I have thoughts.
Okay. Well, before I tell you what it is, I am curious. What do you even think that it could be?
I don't even want to say. It sounds like something that someone who's never given birth made up.
Oh, okay, great, great. Yeah, that's good. Like, so you think maybe somebody who's never given birth before is saying,
Perhaps made up this term. I don't know. How do you even? Okay, so it has something to do with work life balance. I feel like I'm being punked right now. It has something to do with work life balance, but they're calling it work birth. Like I'm birthing balance between my work. Like
okay,
I
you're
need some
getting
context. Help me out here. I feel like when we're playing hot and cold, I am ice cold. I need some
no,
context.
you are thinking about it much more metaphorically
Oh
than
no.
being like quite literal. And this is not a real work birth that happened, but rather it was when Amy Poehler was the host of SNL. So did you see an SNL episode where Amy Poehler was like I think maybe like an attorney or some high powered person, and she literally gives birth at the workplace.
Oh.
So she's like in a meeting, pregnant, very, very pregnant. And then she's like continuing in her meeting while she walks over to like a kiddie pool that they had in the workplace. And she got in the water and
Oh
birthed
my.
a child while
Oh my.
she is, yes, yes. So this. This is where we are. I think it was a kind of a tongue-in-cheek post here on LinkedIn that was basically saying this segment is funny
Okay.
because it's true in a lot of ways
Yeah.
that so many women are having to work up until birth to the point where you are basically saying, do you expect me to just literally be giving birth here
Give
at
birth
work
here.
and
Oh
then
my
continue to
gosh.
work through that and then continuing to work as soon as I birth. Now, in this segment, she does birth, I believe, an adult son
Oh,
somehow, like,
impressive.
sure, because
Yeah,
that's makes for a funny SNL skit.
sure.
Um, but it's talking about the expectations that we have on women to continue to work up until birth, right after giving birth, and to not have access to any kind of maternity leave, paternity leave
Hmm.
that's paid in this country. It's really just a kind of a commentary on all of those things. So is that maybe not quite as scary as what you might have been
I
thinking?
just like, what a term. What a term, work birth. No, I interesting because that is I did not know what to expect with that, but it is a really important topic to talk about, especially through the nonprofit lens. So quick, anecdote here. I have given birth to two children, both of which were born while I've worked at the same organization, but one was, 2011. And at that time, there was another gal that worked here that literally looked at me one day when I was very pregnant. And she was like, "You got to stop working because I am so scared you're going to give birth while you're here. You got to go." So it was kind of like a little opposite nod to that, where I was essentially like, "Okay, you got to go." Now the problem with that at the time, my organization did not offer paid maternity leave. So I was trying to work to the last minute because I did not have days or time, you know, banked up more than the 6 weeks that I was going to need after I gave birth to my kiddo. So, yeah, that is such an important topic. And I'm really glad that you brought that up because, like, in my organization specifically, after I went through that situation, I went to my leader and I was like, this wasn't cool. Like, I did not like this. I think we should talk about changing that. And the folks who were in the organization with me were either parents of much older children who were grown and out of the house, or they were folks that had chosen that that was not their life journey and they weren't going to have kids. So I was really the only one that was affected by that policy. But after I went through it, I went to my leader and I was like, this doesn't feel good. And they were like, you're right. We need to make some changes. So, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the research is pretty clear that parental leave and family leave in general are related to like positive outcomes in the workplace. So the people who are able to take parental leave, first of all, it affects new parents in that you
Mm-hmm.
have lower levels of psychological distress, post-traumatic, like postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. There's also health and well-being of the kiddos. So kiddos whose parents are able to go on parental leave are going to be more likely to get their well visits and their vaccinations and have better health outcomes. We also can see that school completion rates, so whether or not someone finishes school years later,
Wow.
is predicted by if your parents had parental leave, as is the child's wages as an earner worker when they become an adult.
That's wild.
Yes. And then when you think about like to an organization, so organizations that are able to have paid parental leave are see higher levels of job commitment, job satisfaction, productivity, intention to stay, less turnover. And a lot of times employers are really concerned about like, yes, but what are the costs? Well, when you
Mm-hmm.
weigh the cost of losing someone and their
Mm-hmm.
intellectual property and having to retrain someone versus having to pay someone for time when they are not working, quote unquote, not working in their home
Right.
caring for infants, or another child or a caregiver, to like maybe an aging parent, if you're able to expand it to that full family leave policy. Yeah, I mean, the costs are negligible to the
Mm-hmm.
employer in the long run. It ends up actually not costing you as much. But one of the things that I am concerned about when is when nonprofits run so tight,
Right.
I do worry about the burden that someone having to take time off can place on other staff when you're
Mhm.
already running such a tight ship. And I don't know if you have experienced that or if you know other folks in nonprofits who are experiencing that. You may be as a person, as a coworker, like so incredibly happy for your coworker to take the leave that they need and deserve
Mhm.
and that is better for their child and them and the organization and society at large. But it is also putting a burden on the people who are there doing the work if the organization is not set up in such a way that they can support those people who are continuing to do the work.
Yeah, so I've definitely experienced that both from being the person who's out on leave, but also being a person who remains in the office while somebody else goes on parental leave. So my experience when I went on leave initially was we were in the position where we could hire a temporary person to come in. I trained that person. They worked throughout my maternity leave, and then I came back and they left. That was not necessarily the case when I was the person who remained in the office, but we had a staff person who took parental leave for several weeks. That felt it was hard to be the person left in the office, but I think that ways that leaders can help with ensuring that the transition is as smooth as possible is working with that person who will be out on like on not paternity leave, parental leave. Um, Working with that person ahead of time to prepare like some sort of SOP, so some sort of documentation to pass along to folks in the office who will be taking over those tasks.
Will you define what SOP is real quick for people who don't know what that means?
So basically, I'm talking about like policy and procedures that people are creating. So some sort of documentation that like instruction, like an instruction manual for folks to use in very clear terms so that they can find their way through the duties that you're responsible for. So we had that documentation very early on in our, when we were preparing for this person to transition out for leave. And so we would train with that person on those things just so we knew what we were doing. Because I think that even when you have more work to do, if you don't know how to do that work, it just makes it so much more difficult when you're trying to navigate through things. So leaders encouraging their staff to have conversations and do like some light training on those things with some written documentation to accompany that kind of saved us during that transitionary time when we had like one of our, all of our people are main people, but a person who's responsible for like a large amount of work. When that person had to transition away, we felt prepared to take on those roles so that we could support that person while they were gone and they wouldn't come back to a huge mess. Now we did have to take a look at, we're a small staff. We fluctuate between, you know, 3 people and 5 people on staff. And so when somebody goes, it's kind of a big deal. So you also have to take a look at what are the priorities? What are the balls that are in the air that need to remain in the air or and what are the balls that we're juggling that we can intentionally set down until that person comes back into the office so that we can pick them back up and get back to business as usual. So those were really the things that we did to prepare in that instance.
Yeah, those are some really great points. I think having that a manual, a policy, so people know exactly what needs to be done and how to do it. You are right. When people know what they're supposed to do, but they're not exactly sure how to do it. We talk about that as like, role clarity versus role ambiguity. And that can be very stressful. We know
Yes.
that from lots of literature, lots of research, that can be a significant source of stress. And so making sure that you have clear policies, that you have a leader who's supporting. I was also thinking too about like, to what extent, especially in not a small nonprofit, such as where you are, can the leader step in and do some of the
Yes.
staff's work in the meantime to help lessen that burden? I think can go a long way
Yeah.
for establishing trust with that leader and knowing that that leader is on your side, has your back. But yeah, I mean, it has to be more strategic and more structured when it can be. I know sometimes leave has to happen, very suddenly because of an
Right.
event that happens. So I don't want to be too flippant about saying like, oh, it's just as easy as having paid leave when nonprofits maybe they can have paid leave, but because they're so lean, you can't just say like somebody will just be gone and their work won't happen for months and we'll all be fine. And not only will we be fine, but they also will be fine leaving us and not feel
Mhm.
that obligation to be like Amy Poehler and in the kiddie pool having given birth and just going to continue to work because, oh, this place can't run without me. It's like the
Right.
place, you have to have structures in place for the organization to continue to function and know
Yeah.
like you're needed and we need you to come back, but we're okay. Like you said, what can be put to the side and then what is pertinent for now? And please come back. And we can
Mhm.
transition to you and have you back. And then when you come back, what are the policies and procedures in place that can help you navigate the demands that you now have, especially if it is around a newborn?
Mhm.
How can you navigate daycare schedules? How can you navigate the inevitable, your kid is sick and your kid has a fever, they can't go to daycare. So what do you do
Yeah.
if like, yeah, how can you have policies that can help folks to navigate like those outside pressures? So it's not just about the immediate leave policy, but it's also about like the kind of culture around work family issues that are created in your workplace as well.
Right. And you made a couple of like really good points that I want to hit on. One is the leader taking over parts of those tasks. When we went through that experience, we talked about all of the things and we all restructured what needed to be happen, including our executive director. So I think that is an excellent point and something that I would definitely suggest that leaders consider when they've got somebody who's taking planned leave. Because again, like you said, things are going to come up and people are going to have to leave in an instant sometimes, and you just have to figure it out. But what I'm referring to really is more like planned leave. You know, this person is going. Another point that you made was about ensuring that we take care of people kind of in that postpartum time period. So, like when they're starting to ease their way back into work, if you have the opportunity or flexibility for somebody to bring that baby into the office with them, like do that. I brought both of my kids into the office at very young ages. It bothered me a lot more than it bothered my coworkers when they cried or when I had to deal with them. But it gave me the opportunity to kind of get back into work, but it also allowed me to be with my child where I felt like trying to leave them immediately was not healthy for me. Like I wasn't ready to disengage from them in that way after only 6 weeks. So I think that was a really important point. And I think that the point that you were making about, when we're planning for things and we're talking about setting things down intentionally, having conversations about what that looks like with the person who's taking the planned leave is really important. And the reason why I say that is because we talked about during our burnout stories about shame and guilt related to working in nonprofit spaces. And you're like, when you're at home with a newborn and you have had no sleep and everything feels real heavy, it's really easy to feel like you're letting people down at work
Mhm.
because you're not there, especially in a small, like I said, we have between 3 and 5 people that work here. Like we are very close. We have a really good culture and we care and we support each other. So thinking about being gone for that long and knowing that people are kind of like taking over your job duties and it's putting additional pressure on them, it does allow for guilt and shame to kind of fester in. So making sure that you're talking about what your plans are with folks ahead of time so that they know, hey, yeah, we're taking on these extra duties from you, but we're going to set this stuff down. So we're not going to be like so stretched that everybody else out here is going to be burnt out by the time you get back. Like we're making intentional steps to ensure that the critical functions that need to happen while you're gone are going to happen and that you can go away and do the amazing things that you need to do with your family right now. And you can rest assured that like everything will be okay here when you get back.
Yeah, I do want to also say, speaking to the guilt and shame, though, first of all, I love to hold a baby. If anybody needs a baby held at any time, please see me. I think that it was not too long ago when our ancestors lived in small villages and there was like always a baby being born. And I really think in those villages, I would have been one of the people that was helping with the new babies all the time because I love me a baby.
Yes.
It just, there's something, and the scent of a baby's head is like, I just love it. And I am done having children. So the only way that I'm going to get to hold a newborn is when other people let me hold their babies. However, I will also say, you don't want to put unrealistic expectations on your employees to feel
Yes.
like they have to bring their baby to work because they must
Right.
come to work. And so I think giving the autonomy and control and putting the onus on the person to be able to make that choice about, I
Yes.
can go to work and bring my baby and other people will hold my baby and it will be lovely and everybody will be happy, versus I have to bring my baby because I have no leave. My baby is crying. I can't get her to quiet down. Everybody's going to be upset with me because I brought the baby. Now I'm
Yeah.
crying. This is miserable. Like, that is not the kind of environment that you want to create in the
No.
workplace, right?
No. And again, this is all about culture, and it's the culture that you've cultivated. So if your culture is not set up in a way that feels supportive to you in that, like, stay home with your baby. Um, I think the word that rings truest to me in what you just said is autonomy. You're giving someone the choice and opportunity to make decisions that are best for them. So for me, it was what was best for me at that time was, instead of sending my kid off to daycare while I was at work, it was having the flexibility to bring a playpen to work and have my newborn next to me. Um, but yeah, I 1000% agree. The expectation should not be, hey, you just had a baby, bring that baby and get back to work. That's
That's
not,
right.
don't, that's not the lesson to be taken from
No,
this
the expectation
conversation.
the expectation is not, we have a kiddie pool in the office and have you thought about a water birth? Like,
No.
that's not what's happening in this workplace, right? Yeah. Oh, I mean, if you haven't seen it, you just got to go on YouTube and find this video of Amy Poehler in a business suit with a big baby pump giving birth in this kiddie pool. You got to go see it.
It's on the list now. I must go watch this because
Yeah.
yes, that is not proper workplace boundaries or behaviors, everyone. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. But I do look forward to maybe some future SNL episodes if they are workplace related.
Yes,
Maybe we'll
please.
talk about them here.
I think that's great. I think this is the perfect place for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate you chatting with me about that
Yeah,
work
of course.
birth
Work.
story. Next up is the inbox, which is our version of Dear Abby for the workplace, where we're going to share your stories, your questions, and your challenges about burnout, about leadership, and nonprofit life. And Sarah, today's inbox submission comes from Vincent. And Vincent says, does experience matter over degrees and certifications? So, what do you think about that? Degrees and certifications mattering versus experience in the workplace?
Well, I feel like I need to preface this with the fact that I do not have a higher degree. So I'm going to say that experience matters a lot. Um, so I've worked in my nonprofit for over 18 years now. I do not so much as have a bachelor's degree, but I certainly feel like I know what my organization needs. I know how to fulfill those needs. I feel like I've built myself into a leader without the need for a degree or a certification. But there have been times where I have stood in rooms and felt like I'm not as professional as everybody else because I don't have a degree or certification. So I do think that it's kind of a double-edged sword here, or that there are some differing perspectives here on whether or not one matters over the other. I do think that there are certainly pros to having degrees and certifications. But to me, all of my everything that I have learned has been through life experience.
Yeah, I am going to answer this question just like a psychologist would, speaking of degrees,
Hit me
which
with it.
is which is anytime you ask me like a yes or no question, it's going to be it depends. It
Depends.
depends.
It
Yeah, I mean,
depends.
obviously, like if you are talking about your job requires you to be providing therapy, yeah, we're going to want somebody who has the credentials and the
Yes.
degree that is
Yes, please.
commensurate with the things that they are doing. That is incredibly important. And I do, as I am an educator.
Mm-hmm.
I do see the incredible value of education and getting advanced degrees. Advanced being, whatever, anything
Sure.
really beyond high school, I guess, would be an advanced degree compared to most of the workforce in this country. But yeah, like you said, this does not mean that experience doesn't matter. Like, of
Right.
course, experience matters, and of course, you can get experience learning on the job. How could you
Mhm.
not be successful if you've been working for the same organization for 18 years? Like, obviously, you have an incredible amount of intellectual property that's up there in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
You are able to, I've seen you able to like learn new things and take on new tasks. So, yeah, do you need to have letters after your name to show that you are smart, capable leader in your organization? No, absolutely not. But I would also say, like, it is true that for most people, the odds will be stacked against you if you're talking about just career advancement and trajectory if you don't
Mm-hmm.
have a degree. So I'm wondering if that's where like Vincent is coming from. If Vincent is thinking that like maybe Vincent is possibly a student in school and is wondering like, why do I have to get all these like degrees and why do I need to get these certifications?
Yeah.
Or if they're thinking like, what were you going to say?
A career change, like you're
Right.
considering making a career change. Because
Exactly.
I live in my job. I built this house and I will live on it because I love it. I've helped build the culture. I love it here. But if I were to decide to move to another organization, which I'm not, attention everybody who knows me, I'm not going anywhere. But if I were to look somewhere else, a lot of the qualifications that people are looking for is 4-year degree or at least 10 years experience. And like, so do I put myself at a disadvantage if I'm going to apply for other jobs against people who have college degrees, even though I've been in my profession for a bunch of years? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And I do appreciate that you just said like the degree or the experience. I think
Mhm.
that a lot of employers have wisened up to the fact that just saying that you have a college degree doesn't guarantee that you have skills,
Right,
but saying you don't have a college degree doesn't mean you don't have the skills. Like those two things don't necessarily equate to each other. I
right.
do think that the vast majority of people who might go and get a college degree, like through getting that degree, you are gaining valuable skills that are critically
Agreed.
important for employers. And advanced degrees as well. Like if you're talking about going and getting certification in HR, for example, then like you should be someone who can walk into a nonprofit organization in an HR department and be able to be implementing policies and handling things at a very effective level. But you could also have a ton of experience working in HR without having those certifications, which makes, I think it's just a very quick way, especially if you're talking about applying for jobs and on a resume, it's a very quick way to look at someone and say, oh, I predict that they will be able to be good for me
Hmm.
because they have the college degree, they will be good, but also because they have the 10 years of experience, I know that they will be good for me. But I do also like want to like really validate that you do spend a lot of your time surrounded by PhDs. Like you spend a
Yeah,
lot of your time around people with doctoral degrees because because the Kentucky Psychological Foundation and the Kentucky Psychological Association are there for psychologists. Most psychologists in our state, at least right now, are doctoral degree holders. And there is something, I mean, I will be like totally honest, like there's something about like once you work really hard and you get that doctoral degree, you do kind of, put yourself up on that little pedestal sometimes that
yeah,
we get accused of. And even if you don't intend to, there can be some people in those spaces that like look down on other people or put them down, who belittle them. But I think what I have also seen is I've seen a lot of very smart people with advanced degrees looking to you, Sarah, and saying like, Sarah, you're the expert. You know what's going on. Like you belong in this space. We welcome you here. You're needed in this space. So hopefully for every like moment that you get a doubt, you also get a validation from somebody who you're working with that can help solidify like, yes, you belong here.
Yeah, and I certainly do feel that. I do think that some of it is internalized too, though. Like when you, like you said, I am around master's or doctoral level folks all the time. They're like all of the people that I hang out with on a regular basis. So being like the one person in the room who doesn't have any degree, like that is intimidating. And I think it does come like it feeds into some imposter syndrome, certainly. But I do hear from folks like, you're doing a great job. Like, we couldn't run this without you, whatever. Like, those platitudes are really wonderful. But when we're taught, like, when I look at Vincent's question, like, does experience matter over degrees and certification? Well, it kind of depends on what you mean by matter. Does it matter to the members of my organization that I don't have a degree, but I've been here for 18 years? Like, they like me, like they see the work that I do, they know I'm good. Like in that instance, me having a degree doesn't matter. Me trying to get another job at another organization and having a lot of experience in my org but no college degree, that might matter to the people that are trying to hire for that position. So I just think that it really depends on what Vincent may mean by does it matter. For me, I think that there is a larger conversation about accessibility to education and whether or not people have the funds to be able to afford to go to, higher to get a degree in higher education. Um, because for me, that was like the driving force. And I was going to go back to school and get a degree for this very reason, because of like feeling like I needed to feel like a credible person in the spaces that I was in. But I was going in spending thousands of dollars to learn things that I had already learned on the job. Like I was essentially only there to get a piece of paper. So I think it's a nuanced conversation, and there's some gray area in there, and it really just depends on what matters means to you.
Yeah, I teach in our degree completion program. So we actually have a program at my university for students who are older adults, some college, who for one reason or another
Mm-hmm.
need to go back and get their bachelor's degree. Maybe it is for advancement in an organization. Maybe it's a lateral move to a different organization. And one of the things that I'm really proud that we do is that we bring people in and we're able to take things in someone's work portfolio and have that count for college credit. We're actually able to say, like, this work experience that you have can count for what we would teach you if you were to take this class, this class,
Mm-hmm.
this class, or a general elective, to help those folks be able to get a little bit further along in their journey. And I will say it is pretty daunting as the
Mm-hmm.
professor who's trying to like teach these people things about, industrial organizational psychology and psychology applied to the workplace, and have them doing exams and have them doing discussion board prompts when they are teaching me sometimes more than what I feel like I am teaching them, because they are coming with a world of experience. But I am hopeful that they are learning something additional. Like they're able to take these workplace experiences and they're able to tie them into maybe some concepts or the research in a way that they didn't know that that's what that model was, or that theory was, but now they do, and they're able to
Mm-hmm.
tie that in. That's why I say I learned so much from them, because I'm reading all of their prompts and I'm like, wow, this wealth of experience you have is so great, so vast. You're teaching me so much. But hopefully I also am teaching them, and by them being able to complete that degree, it's going to help them maybe in that promotion or the lateral job change. But I know that there are a few people in my life who have very successful careers with not even a bachelor's degree. But I know way more people who do not have bachelor's degrees who are not in successful careers and who don't
Yeah.
have the job growth and job opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, I can't, as an educator, say like degrees and certificates don't matter, because that would be going against what I value.
Of
But I
course.
also recognize that not everyone can afford to get those certifications or can afford more education. Like it's a really sticky subject. And I really wish that we had a little bit more information about Vincent so we could kind of
Me
like understand
too.
where the question is coming from so I could give a better answer than just it depends. But I think that's my final answer is like, it depends. I think work experience can matter a whole heck of a lot more than a
Mm-hmm.
certification in some instances. But I also think that certifications and degrees can matter a lot more than work experience in other situations.
Yeah. And I guess what I'll say to kind of wrap up my thoughts on this is that if we're talking about it from a hiring perspective, so if I'm a nonprofit and I'm trying to determine whether I'm going to hire somebody with a 4-year degree versus somebody with some experience, what I would say is that likely both of those people are qualified to do the work. And so when you're interviewing folks, like for me, if somebody has passion for the mission of what you're doing, they're going to learn the things that you need them to learn to do the job successfully because they're passionate about the mission. So I wouldn't get so caught up in the experience versus the certification degree, the kind of qualifications of it all. Like find a person that feels like they fit within your culture, find a person that feels like they are eager and excited to learn about the work that you're doing because they're passionate about the communities that you're helping. I agree with you, Courtney, wholeheartedly. There are jobs in our society that require you to have higher degrees. And I think that there are certainly positions within nonprofits that you should have a degree in the work that you're doing. But I think that even in like lower levels, so like for me, I was brought in as a receptionist in college. Like I was really young, really green, and they taught me everything that I know now, starting at that point. So taking a chance on somebody at maybe like a lower level who you could bring in at a, that's green that you can teach to work and run within your organization is also a good way to go. I wholeheartedly believe that people should go to college and get degrees to better themselves in however they can and to learn. But if it's not accessible to you for whatever reason, um, I hope that nonprofit leaders will give those folks a chance without being too concerned about whether or not they meet that 4-year college qualification.
Yeah. Yeah. Hire for the things that are probably going to keep the person there.
Right.
Things like passion and dedication and work ethic and conscientiousness and maybe some other things, and then train them, like get them there, get your little Sarahs in the door, and then once you have your little Sarahs there, then invest in them and train them and teach them, and then before you know it, 18 years will go by and now they're a leader in your organization.
Yeah. I'm very pro that approach. It's worked out
You're
really great for me. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. You're very pro like bringing in little Sarahs and helping them advance along the way.
I just really love the thought of having a sector full of people that are just excited about the work that they're doing, who are coming there because they care about the missions of their organization and that they leave work at the end of the day and feel fulfilled by what they're doing. So, yes, I would like a tiny army of little Sarahs in all of the nonprofits across Kentucky. Folks who are passionate about the work they're doing, whether they have a degree or they don't.
Yep. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, Vincent. Thanks for sending it in.
And if it doesn't, get in touch with us and give us some more context, and we'd be happy to give you a more
Yeah.
in-depth answer. But thank you so much for submitting, your entry into the inbox, Vincent. We really appreciate it.
And if anyone out there has another question that they would like to get answered, please submit them to our inbox. We'll put the link in our show notes for how you can do that. We would love to answer more of your sticky workplace questions and comments and things about burnout here on the Burnout Room. Our last segment, of course, is always our ripples of gratitude, which is when we thank someone in our community, which hopefully will inspire other people to thank folks in their community, and therefore ripples of gratitude will happen. So I'm going to talk about my ripple this week, since we were talking about the issues with maternity leave and trying to take time off. I'm going to give my ripple of gratitude 15 years later to my supervisor when I was in grad school, his name was Hack Harrison. And Dr. Harrison was my supervisor at the Economics Bureau that I actually worked at when I found out that I was going to have my child when I was in grad school. And both he and Ron Landis, who is my professor and my advisor, were so incredibly really supportive. I was so nervous. I remember to tell my supervisor that I was pregnant. There was no maternity policy for graduate students at the time.
Wow.
And I went to him very nervous and I said, I just wanted to let you know that I'm pregnant. And he said, Oh, that's so wonderful. That is so wonderful. That's so great, which was not what I was expecting. I did not know what he was going to say, but just to say that's so wonderful, congratulations, was not what I was expecting. So I think the statute of limitations has probably run out on this. So I could probably say that what we did unofficially is unofficially, I said, look, I was due at the beginning of March and I crafted my own maternity leave policy essentially. And I said, look, I'm not going to teach in the spring semester. This is when I'm supposed to give birth. And so what I'm going to do is instead of working 20 hours a week, I'm just going to work as much as I possibly can. So I essentially did not teach that last semester before I had my kid. And I worked 40 hours a week and I just kind of banked extra hours. And then I just kept getting paid. Like nobody ever told, I'm like hiding right behind, nobody ever told the university that I was out and I just kept getting paid for 8 weeks. I was able to, I banked up enough time to be able to take off 8 weeks. And my advisor never said to me, oh, I don't think you're going to finish. You'll never come back. You're not serious about this program. Like all of the things in my head that I was certain that they were going to say, they didn't say. They let me craft a policy. I continued to make just a very tiny amount of money that I was making as a graduate assistant in grad school. And when I got finished, I had the summer as well. Thank goodness I didn't have to teach in the summer or take classes in the summer. And I will say, man, I was so motivated in that fall to finish that dissertation. I've never been so motivated before as when I had a child. I was so ready to meet that accomplishment for her and to to make her proud, even though she was an infant. And what did she know? But I really just felt supported by these two men who helped me come up with a policy that made sense for me and who supported me at a time when I really needed that support. So here's to like all of the leaders who are out there helping to craft really creative policies to support the folks who need to go on that leave. So ripple of gratitude to Ron Landis and to Hack Harrison.
That is so awesome. I love so much that they did that for you and that they allowed you to create something that worked for you.
And I guess if I do still owe money, to my university from grad school for those weeks that I did not work, come see me, send me a bill. But hopefully it was a creative strategy that I was working for it. I just kind of changed the time when I said I was going to be working.
Yeah. I mean, but honestly, that's a good example of you can be creative and create policies that actually work for people. It doesn't always have to be red tape.
Yeah.
So, my ripple today is going out to selfishly the staff here at KPA and KPF. So, I mentioned earlier in the episode that we recently got done with a very large conference that we put on every year. It's kind of like our Super Bowl. We spend hours and hours and hours working to pull this thing together. And then we facilitate an event where there are between 350 and 400 people there. And so I've mentioned several times our staff is between 3 and 5 people. There are not a lot of us. And the week prior to the event, I got COVID. Bum, ba dum, bum, 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 bum. Please don't sue
Worst
me for using that
timing.
jingle.
Yeah. Worst
Worst,
timing.
worst timing literally ever. I have only missed, so in 18 years, I've missed one convention, and it was because I was on maternity leave after having a baby. So I was very ill, was not as present as I really needed to be in order to, complete these tasks that had to get done the week before this giant event. But man, my team coalesced, came together. Our executive director really pulled everything together, and we had one of the most successful conventions that we've had in 18 years. And it is in huge part to the flexibility of the team who came together in my absence and did a lot of work that was not their responsibility to do. So my ripple of gratitude today goes out to the staff at the Kentucky Psychological Association and the Kentucky Psychological Foundation for being a great support system for me during a time that was really challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. I will reiterate, excellent convention.
Thank you.
Went off without a hitch. Everything seemed great. And also, yes, a ripple of gratitude to those folks who do awesome work all year long, but who also really pulled it together right before a big event and were able to take on the work that they needed to for you to be able to rest and get healthy and well. So, and you actually did make it to convention. You were there.
I did. Luckily, the Tuesday before, I got a negative COVID test and was just like ready and raring to get back at it. So I was really fortunate that I was able to be on site. It is my favorite event of the year. You know, a lot of what we do is virtual these days. This is my opportunity to get face to face with folks that I've known for 2 decades. So I was really glad to be back, but I was also very fortunate to have a wonderful team who pulled off all of the things that needed to be pulled off to ensure that we had that successful event.
Well, that's it for today. The Burnout Room is sponsored by the Kentucky Psychological Foundation. And if you would like to support our work by bringing free mental health resources to Kentucky nonprofits, please consider donating at kentuckypsychologicalfoundation.org.
A huge, massive thanks to our producer, Nikki Collerich, for all of her incredible work, and to Mike Russell for composing our music.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in and being part of this community. Don't forget to please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Leave a comment about topics that you think would both be helpful for you and your organization.
We will see you next time. Hi, friend.
Hi, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Why do we sound like the Count from Sesame Street?
I don't know.
Hilarious. We're very funny.